In this Fulfilling Orders lesson, we'll cover the configurations for managing statuses. After you complete this lesson, you'll be able to create status values and explain how statuses are assigned. You'll also be able to designate status values for fulfillment lines and create an orchestration process class. With each lesson, we're introduced to this graphic which represents the wide range of functionality provided by the order-to-cash flow. Each topic touches one of these functions, including upstream and downstream integrated applications. In this lesson, we focus on managing order statuses. Continuing with the Fulfillment Orchestration to Invoice OMBP's configuration steps, this lesson provides a better insight into the orchestrate fulfillment and monitor performance subprocesses. Specifically, you will learn key features and related setups for configuring order and order line status values, as well as the assignment of status values through conditional rule configurations. The outcome of these configurations include optimized business processes, including tailoring order management status values to provide optimal visibility and transparency to your sales organization, and streamlining the ability to monitor your fulfillment performance through precise status progression tracking. Our first topic will provide an overview of order statuses. Let's get started. Oracle Order Management includes a set of seeded fulfillment processes that support the standard order-to-cash flow. However, you can extend these processes to better match your business requirements. For example, some customers might require proof of delivery, but the seeded processes may not include a step after shipping and before the order closes. In that case, you might add an extra task and introduce new statuses, such as customer accepted or customer rejected. You can extend the status framework to add new status values and assign them to new or existing tasks in your orchestration process. You can also control how status values roll up to a fulfillment line and to the orchestration process overall. Status management is one part of enabling order orchestration. Orchestration also includes order promising, branching conditions, pause task, and wait steps. It also covers orchestration process planning and jeopardy management, orchestration process definition, fulfillment line splits, deploying the orchestration process, change management, and hold management. Status shows the progress of order and process objects, including the task, orchestration process, fulfillment line, order line, and the overall order. This helps order entry specialists quickly spot issues and take action. Status values are typically refreshed after Oracle Order Management receives a response from a fulfillment system. In these screenshots, you can see the order status at the top of the order, the fulfillment line status on an order line, the process status in the orchestration process header, and the task statuses on the orchestration plan tab. To view the order, go to Navigator, select Order Management, and then click Order Management. On the Overview page, enter the order number in the search field and click the search icon. On the Manage Orders page, click the order number link. To view the Orchestration Plan tab, follow the same steps to open the order. Then, open the Actions menu and select Switch to Fulfillment View. On the Order page, select the Fulfillment Lines tab, and in the Fulfillment Lines table, click the Orchestration Process Number link. Our next topic discusses how statuses are used in the order management application. This diagram shows how order management assigns statuses. When a fulfillment system sends a response, the task layer interprets that response and determines the task status for the task, the fulfillment line, and the orchestration process. Then, based on that task status, order management automatically sets the fulfillment line status and orchestration process status by evaluating the status conditions defined in the orchestration process. Finally, the order line status and overall order status roll up from the fulfillment line status. Next, we'll explore the configurations for setting up order statuses. Order management includes several predefined statuses, and those may be enough for your organization. If you need something more specific, you can also create your own status values. Status setups usually involves two main activities. First, you create status values by defining status codes and specifying where each code can be used. For example, you might allow invoiced to be used as a fulfillment line status. Second, you create status conditions by defining simple if-then rules that control when a status is applied. For instance, if the ship task status is shipped, then you can set the orchestration process status to shipped. These screenshots highlight where you set up status values in order management. On the status code page, you first create the status values. Later, you decide where those statuses can be used, such as for fulfillment lines, task, or orchestration processes. This page is essentially the master list of statuses available throughout order management. On the task types page, you specify which statuses can be used for each task type. A task type groups related services that perform fulfillment tasks, and the predefined task types are available by default. You select a task type at the top of the page, and then you add the status values you want to associate with it at the bottom. On the fulfillment line statuses page, you designate which statuses can be used for fulfillment lines. Not started is the initial fulfillment line status when an order is created. You then define the rules for when each status is assigned as part of the orchestration process definition, and those rules are called fulfillment line status conditions. On the orchestration process classes page, you set up a class, which is simply a group of statuses that can be applied to an orchestration process. When you create an orchestration process definition, you choose the class with statuses that fits your process, and then you define the specific status logic in the orchestration process definition. As order management processes an order, it completes the task in the assigned orchestration process step by step. Each fulfillment task has a default sequence of statuses, but you can also create your own task statuses for task types that are enabled for status pass-through. For any internal status, whether it's seated or user-defined, you can choose the display status value that users will see. On the Manage Task Status Conditions page, you'll see several key fields. The task type appears in the type column. Then, Receive Statuses appear in the internal status value column, and it represents the status that's passed in from an integrated application. The display status appears in the display status value column, and it controls how that received status is shown in the user interface. As an example, an integrated fulfillment system might send a status of invoice, but if your organization prefers the term billed, you can select billed as the display status value. To set up status conditions for orchestration processes or fulfillment lines, you work directly in the orchestration process definition. As you create an orchestration process definition, you must select an orchestration process class, and you can optionally select a status catalog. In the screenshot, both the process class and the status catalog are selected at the top of the Create Orchestration Process definition page. A status catalog is a grouping of items where you want to apply the same set of statuses. If you choose to use a process, you can use an item category to make the same status conditions apply to a specific set of fulfillment lines. In other words, any fulfillment line that contains an item in that category will use the same status conditions. You define catalogs in Oracle Fusion Cloud Product Management. A process class is a set of status codes, and you must select one when you create the orchestration process definition. When you choose a process class, its status code becomes available for you to use when you define status conditions. These are the statuses that represent the orchestration process, and they're visible throughout the application. As order management processes an order, it completes the task in the assigned orchestration process, step by step. Each fulfillment task comes with a default sequence of statuses, but you can also define your task statuses and status sequences for an orchestration process. As you design the process, you decide what orchestration process status should be set at each stage. For example, if the schedule carpet task is unsourced, you need to determine what overall status the orchestration process should show. When you create an orchestration process definition, you typically start with the default status rule set. You use it to define status conditions for all fulfillment lines that the process can handle. If different items need different status behavior, you then add fulfillment line specific status conditions. For instance, you might use one set of status rules for textbooks and a different set for paperback books. In the screenshot, orchestration process statuses appear on the orchestration process status value subtab, and fulfillment line statuses appear in the Edit Status Rule Set window. With orchestration process status conditions, you can define which statuses represent the orchestration process. You can also select a preset group of orchestration process statuses to use. Then, you create rules that control how and when the orchestration process moves into each status. Sometimes you need different statuses progression for different fulfillment lines, even when they're in the same orchestration process. For example, both shippable and non-shippable fulfillment lines may need a different set of statuses for each line type. A status catalog helps you differentiate which status values to use based on item characteristics. A status rule set lets you apply a defined sequence of fulfillment line statuses to the lines that the orchestration process handles. The rule set contains the conditions that control when each fulfillment line status. For example, if a task comes back with a status of unsourced, you can create a runtime rule that sets the fulfillment line status to unscheduled. Rule set reduce administration because you can apply one rule set to many fulfillment lines, and you can reuse the same logic across multiple item categories. If both a parent category and a child category references different status rule sets, the child category takes priority. Find a broad all items category and then create a subcategory for the items that require different status behavior. During processing, order management assigns an overall status to the order based on the fulfillment line that has progressed the furthest in the order lifecycle. To determine each fulfillment line status, the application evaluates the status conditions in sequence, and the true condition with the highest sequence number sets the status. If you enable Notify External Systems, order management raises an event that an order capture system can subscribe to. A note of caution: if you migrate data using managed configuration packages, don't change status rule set names in either instance because renaming can prevent references in the orchestration process from updating correctly. To reinforce your learning for this lesson, student practices have it included in your activity guide. Creating a status value and enabling it for fulfillment lines, creating a status value and enabling it for pass-through, creating an orchestration process class, and creating status conditions for an orchestration